Hey guys, it's Dani. Today we are working with my Habenaria Orchid. This is the myriotricha. Okay, there are some sources which say that this one is the same as the radiata. Actually, not radiata, medusa. I meant medusa. I got them confused. I'll correct myself later in the video as well. Sorry about that. If those sources are correct, I actually used to have this orchid and I lost it when I moved countries because I rotted the corm. You see, this is a special type of orchid. It is a terrestrial orchid which produces a corm inside the potting mix. And each year it withers off and takes a dormancy. If in that dormancy it gets watered a little bit too much, then the corm can actually rot, which is what happened to my older one. And I've been waiting for a second chance with this orchid because I really like it. And I just got it last year. So today it is time to repot this orchid because guess what? It has started to wake up. I already see green starting to grow next to the old stem. And this is a sign that I can now water the corm a little bit more. I'm not so afraid of rotting because it is actively growing, spending moisture and energy. So the water will actually be absorbed. It's just not gonna stand there. And I thought I'm gonna take you along and document this process once again. I'll tell you how I treated it over the winter and what I'm gonna do with it starting today. So I hope you'll enjoy today's video. If you do, don't forget to give it a like, it really helps it out. And why not subscribe? I post multiple times a week, all sorts of plant content, but mainly orchid content. Righty then, with that said, where are my gloves? Are these dry? Yeah, they are. All right, so first of all, when I received it, this orchid had a stem and a few leaves, but it already has bloomed. We didn't catch the blooms. But immediately after blooming, Habenaria goes into dormancy. It starts to lose its leaves, they become yellow, they fall. It is a good idea not to cut the leaves before they completely dry off because the corm actually absorbs all of those nutrients stored in the leaves and stems. So I didn't do that. I cut the stem right here when everything was done. And I just kept this pot just like this next to my non-functioning biorb. So not under the grow lights or anything, just in a place in my greenhouse that was not used by anything else. During winter time, obviously I did not water this orchid, but there are some instances in which the corm can actually desiccate through the winter. And I'm thinking it has to do with very dry or very warm environments. So it is advised, and I do advise it as well because I did it in the past with my previous one, that during winter, a little bit of water is offered every now and then. What I did this winter was to just spray a little bit this moss like this, let all of the water accumulate in the decorative pot and then be picked up a little bit by the moss every 2 weeks or so. That's what I did every 2 weeks, just to make sure that that corm doesn't completely desiccate. I'm not entirely sure if in this environment it would do that because in the winter it's not very dry in here, but I didn't want to take any chances. But that's all I did every 2 weeks or so. Sometimes I forgot about it, so I did it every 3 weeks. It's not an exact science. I just tried to keep a little bit of humidity around the corm. Obviously, no fertilizer. This is just normal water. I think it's tap water. I don't even think I put osmosis water in here. I also didn't expose the corm to very low temperatures. Just because it takes a winter dormancy doesn't mean it has to be cold. I just kept it in normal greenhouse grow room temperatures where all of my plants are still growing, so I don't have a very cold environment, and that was okay. This orchid is not a cold grower, it is actually a warm grower, and the temperature doesn't really affect its dormancy and so on. It doesn't need to go through a freeze or anything of the sorts. Right, so that's what I did all winter long for the past 3 months or so. Other than that, absolutely nothing. I didn't change its place, didn't increase light or anything of the sorts, and just waited. Because at some point, you will discover next to the old stem another growth point. That is the cue that the orchid is waking up. And it is one of the best times to repot. You can actually repot during winter and dormancy as well, but because this orchid is potted in moss and moss is better removed when wet, I really didn't want to wet the corm. So I can wet it now and I will be okay about it. But let's see if it wants, no, this is very compacted. I would kind of rip the corm apart because the corm is actually very fuzzy. So what I will need to do is wet this moss very, very well. I'm gonna try to not put water in the new growth, so not from above. I'm gonna try to let it soak water from below. I'm too lazy to go to the sink, that's why I'm doing this. And these sprayers are awesome. I have them linked in my Amazon store down below if you're interested. They are battery powered. You just charge them through a USB cable. All right, so I'm just gonna let this soak up, become wet, and I'll come back to remove the sphagnum moss. All right, I think we're pretty well soaked now. So let's try to remove this moss from around the corm. Being very, very gentle around this new growth so that we don't break it. I personally do not like to use only sphagnum moss for Habenarias because they are so fuzzy. The roots are fuzzy, which all of the roots are dead now. They lose the roots once a year. The corm is fuzzy, and then when you have to do this procedure, it can be a little scary because you really don't want to break that new growth. So I will not be using moss. So I will not be able to remove all of this moss from the corm, but that's okay. I want to remove as much of it as possible because in time it breaks down, becomes very, very acidic, not okay. But rather than breaking anything, yeah, I'd rather deal with acidity. I'm gonna give you a close-up when I'm done because I don't think you can understand anything from this, right? Hold on, I'll give you a close-up after I clean it up a little bit. Oh, this is nerve-wracking. Okay, at this point, I can also remove the old stem, which is dried. I am actually going to cut it. There is just the tiniest bit of dried sheath connecting it to the new growth, or actually to the corm, to the place where the new growth is coming from. And I don't want to rip that apart. I'm just going to cut it like so. Ta-da! That's all that I'm gonna do, most probably with this corm. There's a little bit of moss left, but hey, you know what? We are good with what we have. Let me get you in closer. There we go. This is our corm. It's quite a large corm. You would expect it to be bulbous. No, it's not. Look at that. And I don't know if you can tell how fuzzy it is, but trust me, it is. And removing all of this sphagnum moss is absolutely impossible. I'd rather not do it. This is the new shoot, new growth, and the old one, the dried one, was right next to it, right here. So if I would have pulled it, I would have taken this green growth together with it. I just cut it, and that is enough. I do want to remove as much dried bits as possible because the only thing that they will do is just start to break down in the new medium. And that's not okay because orchid pots are not compost piles. All right, I'm not gonna be reusing the old pot because this corm can actually grow a little larger than that, so I'm gonna go find a bigger pot. All right, so the pot that I'm gonna use is this one. Do you remember it? This used to be the pot that the very pot-bound Oncidium had. It's perfect for this orchid since it is a terrestrial, and even though you can absolutely use transparent pots, there's really nothing all that interesting going on with this one. It's not as interesting as an epiphytic orchid, so I can definitely use an opaque pot. And the potting mix will be, hopefully it's enough. It's a mixture of an all-purpose potting mix that I have. I find it to be pretty good, in which I added some bark just for a little bit of variation, and I think this will be perfect for this orchid. So I'm gonna start, of course, with a layer on the bottom, and what I will try to do is find the level at which this new growth is already out. Do you see it's already green? And I do see it's leafing out. So these leaves should be on top of the medium, which means I need to place a little bit more. The corm, it's important to make sure it fits in the pot, otherwise it will dry out and dehydrate. It will not produce aerial roots or anything of the sorts. So I want to make sure that the corm is buried. Okay, that's a little too much. Let's see if I can center it a little bit. If not, it's okay. Okay, maybe something like this. Trying to make it a little bit central in the pot, like so. Oh, please be enough. I really don't want to go outside and get more soil because it's cold and it's raining. Yeah, I think we have enough. Thank goodness. With this orchid, I will not use slow release fertilizer because the all-purpose potting mix that I'm using is already pre-fertilized and I don't want to overdo it. This orchid, even though in one growing season it completely matures the plant and blooms, so it does consume quite a bit of nutrients, kind of like catasetums, this one actually stores nutrients in the corm, so it already has a reserve, the potting mix is already pre-fertilized, and if I so desire, if I see I have deficiencies, I can use my water-soluble fertilizer. I feel that if I use slow release as well on top of all of this, it's gonna be an overkill. And anything that is good can become bad if it's excessive. You know what I always say. I'm gonna add the tag back, but I'm not gonna put a date on it because there's no slow release fertilizer and I know the growth habit of this orchid. I just realized something. At the beginning I said Habenaria radiata, right? That's not what I meant. I meant Habenaria medusa. I had the medusa, and some sources say that this one is the same as the medusa. I don't know, but the flowers are very, very similar. You have to Google it. You have to see the flowers. I find it spectacular. I want to have more Habenarias in my collection because I find them spectacular, and I find them to be easy to grow as long as you respect the growth pattern, as long as you don't overdo it with that water in winter. They are warm growing. I don't think I'm gonna have issues with my environment, so yeah, there we go. We are done. I'm just gonna slightly water it, and of course I'm gonna use a decorative pot to catch all of that water and protect the furniture. Look at that, perfect fit. I'm so happy that I kept this pot. It is perfect, look at that. I'll make a little insert here. When watering, it is important to avoid the new growth because it can rot if the water sits in there for too long, if you don't have enough ventilation, wind, and so on, which obviously we don't have in our homes, right? So when watering, pour the water on the sides like this. You just want that potting mix to become wet. You want the corm to be moist, not the new growth. So don't just sprinkle water on top, because there's always that risk. Why take the risk? This is a beautiful orchid, not very available all the time, to be fully honest. So yeah, don't take that chance. The outside world and their natural habitat is very, 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 very different than our living rooms. So we gotta do things differently. Alrighty, so I will keep you up to date. I decided to make small updates, very short updates on my second channel, MissOrchidGirl Shorts, together with humoristic shorts and all of that. Very clickbaity titles done on purpose, but with an underlying correct information. I'll never share with you false information. I'm gonna make fun of false information, that's for sure. And I do believe I posted a myth busting video recently. Check it down below if you feel like that's something you'd like to watch. Check it down below. It's not going to be tutorials or anything. This channel is for tutorials and serious information. The other channel is for my humoristic side, which can be slightly weird sometimes. And I'm not afraid to clickbait people into that because I have no issue stealing views from clickbait videos, to be fully honest, and deliver the proper information. Alrighty, so with that said, thank you so much for watching. I will make sure to update you on and off on the other channel and do a big update on this channel. And if you'd like to stay up to date with me on other social platforms, just search for me. I'm at MissOrchidGirl, but most importantly, subscribe to this channel so you stay up to date with all of the videos that I post, all of the updates and all of the tutorials and such. Alright, so with that said, hope you have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye!